Welcome to another 3-day series, and today we are taking a look at these 3 projects. So we have the flow, field, and cycle. And for this series, I wanted to work a little bit with noise and try to come up with new noise patterns. So the first project looks kind of nice. The second one, I just had a hard time trying to come up with a new pattern style, but I like the way this kind of lines forms. And for the third project, I really went all in on trying to figure out, how to work with procedural patterns for noise. And I came up with this setup right here, and it just looked so nice. So yeah, the nice thing about the 3-day project, and I already said that in a couple of videos, but it's really nice to be able to work on a specific setup for 3 days in a row, because you never know, if I stopped at the first project, I wouldn't be able to come up with this setup right here. So yeah, anyway, let's get into the first project. And for the scene, as you can see, there's a camera, a light, icosphere, and a plane. So let's press render to see what's up. And this is pretty much the setup. So it's a basic plane. I don't think I have any displacement. There's a geometry node, but I'm not sure what it was for. So let's take a look. It's just a subdivision, which, if you just want to add the subdivision to a plane, the way to go would be to just add a subdivision here. But I think I started off by trying to make a displacement plane. So that's why I have some subdivision here for no reason. But I kind of stopped working with displacement because I just had a hard time with the mesh subdivision, because as you can see here, there's a lot happening, right? And you really need a lot of subdivision to be able to work on that. Of course, I worked with the experimental branch. That's why the render is set to experimental, but I ended up not using the displacement. Let's take a look at the setup. So of course, I didn't come up with this setup on my own. I went into Blender site, and as you can see, in the demo files, there's a couple of files here that you can download, and I went with this one, with the color vortex. So I'm gonna open this up, and if we go here, you can see that I am reusing the setup that they had here. So texture coordinate, length, put inside of the power, multiply, and thanks to the value here, you can change the swirl. But that's pretty much what I took from this. Of course, I didn't want it to create a vortex like that, but it was nice to work with the length node. So let's close these up and come back to our project. So as you can see, this is the same thing. The only difference is that I did add some noise here that I'm multiplying with the value inside of the multiply node. And so from here, from the noise texture, you can kind of play around with how this looks. Of course, the plane is just so huge. And as you can see, I'm just taking a small part. I have a sphere because I liked the, let's go back. I like the kind of shadow that it created. So if you close that, it's going to be a basic plane. And so the details here is crazy. There's a lot of spots that you can choose from, and just set up your camera. So I went here. Everything goes inside of the vector rotate, and from here I have another noise texture which kind of controls the black and white intensity of the noise, from what I can understand at least. As you can see, if I add more scale, we are going to have more lines form on the pattern. But I'm going to keep this at maybe 14, 15. And after that, I have a couple of color ramps, and each of them controls something different from the principal BSDF. So as you can see, our color goes into the base color. I have another one that controls the metallic, the roughness, and another one that controls the normal map. And if you want to displace that, you could also add a displace node in here. But yeah, I just wanted to have a nice kind of color pattern happening. And the color ramp, of course, with the ramp generator, and we can change that. So yeah, I kept on randomizing the pattern until I had something that I liked. Another thing to note is that, as you can see here in our vector rotate, I have the texture coordinate set to generated, and as you can see, it starts right from the point here on the 0, 0 axis, and you can see this kind of waves that are created thanks to our noise. But you can also set this to object and have that in the middle. And that's how I started, but I didn't really like, having this on the middle like that. All right, let's take a look at the second project. All right, so this is the field project. As you can see, we have the same setup, the same aquos, the same sphere here that enclose our view. And I'm going to go to my plane, and we have exactly the same setup. The only difference is that I added here a Voronoi texture to try and have something different. And I did play around with that a lot, but yeah, this is kind of what I was able to create. And as you can see, I did use the object texture coordinate to have it happen from the center. And I am just right next to the center. Again, we have our noise texture to control kind of the intensity of our lines, and our color ramps. And for this one, I added a map range just to be able to kind of control which part of the ramp is going to be affecting our mesh. And as you can see, you can go through all the colors by changing the map range. And for the third project, we still have kind of the same setup. This time, I kind of went back to be able to fill up my plane, so just be able to use the whole plane and not have to zoom in different places. So as you can see, my camera is pointing at the center, and I do have a couple of stuff happening here. So we have a texture coordinate going into a vector rotate and inside of a multiply node with a noise. And after that, we have our length, power multiply the value, a Voronoi texture, which is driven by the vector of our noise texture. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and I just love the way this looks. So, if we zoom in, we can see that there's actually a couple of different noises going into this, right? And if we change some of the scale, so this controls the values for our colors, and the scale of this noise is controlled by our noises here, right? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I can't really explain properly, but as you can see, if you change some values around, you can see what's happening. And I wanted to create kind of a custom node for that. Here I've been trying to kind of create different noise patterns that I can control with sliders, and I created this one, and I'm going to plug this in, press render, and as you can see, we have exactly the same setup that we had. And yeah, this is nice. And now, thanks to this node, I can change some values around the scale of the noise. So yeah, this was a nice little custom group. As you can see, we have the same setup that I had on the last project. So I'm going to make this available at some point. And what I'm trying to do on this project is trying to just create different types of noise that I could integrate at some point with, maybe a product or a plugin. I will see. And that's pretty much it for this 3-day series. You know, noise on plane, why not, right? And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.